Okay, and this poem is a response to this beautiful box, which you can't see in the picture, but it's a box, or it looks like a box to me. I guess I shouldn't call it a box, but it's called the Big Bang box. So, yep. So I saw it as a box, and I said it was Pandora's box, and the name of the poem is Pandora. It isn't just the one box. Warehouses of boxes surround her now, stacked helter-skelter. Even without Eve's plucking the apple, boxes teeter, fall into the aisles and spill. The serpent winds through them, grinning his toothy grin, fangs dripping venom. Of course she had to lift the lid on the jar of secrets. Any sentient being would. She can't help Adam's dense lack of curiosity. He fails to see even the shimmering tightrope that stretches between obedience and knowledge. Inside the box of ferns and mosses, and by the way, there was a box of ferns and mosses also, which you can see in the art gallery if you haven't seen it already. Inside a box of ferns and mosses, she discovers plants with poison berries and an inner box of mushrooms, most nutritious and a few lethal. After pausing to consider, Pandora releases seeds and spores to the wind. We need mushrooms. In one box, essential pollinating bees intermingle with mosquitoes and ticks. The box of corn, and there was a box of corn, the box of corn also contains corn blight and the corn weevil. Underneath them all, she uncovers a box of stars. Pandora sees through the box as if it were transparent. She sees fields of night flowers, Persephone thigh-deep in poppies, the sky spangled with stars, the earth splitting to reveal Hades with his team of black horses, and Cerberus beside him, spittle flying. None of this has happened yet, not in the mortal world, but it plays over and over in Pandora's head as she holds the small box in her hands. The box holds the infinite sky, the stars, the galaxies, and the meager attempts of far distant mortals to span a fraction of that space. Hubris. Not even the gods could imagine such foolish pride. Pandora holds the box of stars to an ear. Inside the box, Persephone screams as Hades snatches her. In a bolt of clarity, Pandora sees Persephone cracked down the middle like a china doll. Above Persephone, a billion stars expand, sacred spirals and flower shapes, burning in all the colors of the spectrum, while Persephone collapses into the arms of Hades. A huge whistling fills the warehouse and bursts into the empty night sky as Pandora lifts one more lid to let the inevitable into the mortal world. She is Eve. This is her work. For her, for this, Zeus took Adam's rib. As stars flow past her face into the once blank sky, she bites another piece of the apple, sweet and tart. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lori.
We should, Pam and I work together to find the artist, but it's Mary and Kay Michelle Moran who help us find the poet. So I just, I've read that poem over and over again, and until I just heard her read it, it was, and I loved it. Like, the second I read it, I was just like, oh my gosh, she got it. But I now could write essays on how much she just saw of me in a bunch of doggone dots, on a very small dot. They're small but dots. I'm a gel pen fanatic. I'll get back to that in a second. I just want to say how beautiful it is to be in a room full of so many creative people and so many people that value creativity. And what a great anecdote that is to, and like the depth of these words that we're hearing tonight, and the depth of the images versus sound bites and fake news and all sorts of stuff. I don't want to get nowhere going, that's all I'm saying. Enough about that, but thank you for choosing to use language in a truly deep and meaningful way to each other. So that's it. Back to this piece. No, Mary nailed it down to when I was in first grade. There were 3 books that if you went back to my elementary school, you know, when you used to sign out the books like on the library card, there were literally like probably 3 library cards that were the Greek myths. Like it was the Golden Book of Greek mythology. And literally, it was my name week after week. And this is not a long book, but I was in first grade now. But I just read those myths over and over again, and they have been a passion of mine that actually led me to opera through my life. And so, when I saw the title of the poem, I was like, wow, that's so cool. And then I kept reading, and all of the references are fantastic. And then the fact that she talked about something that opens and it releases something, this box literally started with 1 dot. And that's the way, this is like my meditation, as I do these mandalas. And this kind of segues into the next piece that I had the fortunate ability to do for Anne's poem. I can't see where you're at, but anyway, mandalas are a big part because I've studied a lot of different religions and just came to that point of loving that is a form that's represented all throughout the world at different times, etc. But I'll show you the dot. If I can remember. Well, it's a weird orientation. No, it's that dot right there. So if you actually look at the piece, it all starts from that dot, and then it creates different variations of it that go across, and it's all about how when one dot explodes into other dots, how do they intersect with each other? And then how does that intersection create other pieces? So that's part of the Big Bang box idea, but Pandora's box was a great way to see it. So segue to the luxury of kindness, which I stole those words. They just jumped out at me as just something so sensuous and something that's easy to forget. So my response to this poem has, if you read it and when you hear it, you'll get it, and I don't want to say too much because you'll hear it in the poem itself, but she talks about a garden, and I grew up with my mother's garden. I grew up with I have my own garden, which has actually become a secret garden because I've neglected it for the past few years. So I think my neighbors don't consider it a garden. It is something, but it also represents about 20 years of linoleum carving and linoleum designing. There's 14 different linoleum carvings that are printed onto that canvas multiple times, and that it was a wonderful way for me to sort of take my past and bring it together into a center. And I'll let that segue into this beautiful poem that I was honored to work with.
I just want to say that this, if you haven't seen this painting, go look at it, because the slide doesn't do justice to it. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous painting. And in my poetry, often I write to try to get to the very essence that's within everything. And I think that painting does that. The memory of brightness. I'm immediately drawn to the center of the garden, a kind of pivot in time. All malicious thoughts suspend. The ache in my stomach is absorbed by the relevancy of light. My eyes want to lift upward. I let them have their way. A pause, breathless. No fluttering of anything. Something essential like blood or air emanates from the faded vines and leaves. A memory, pale yet dusted with insistence, fills the air with a powdery hush. I see flaws, leaves edged with crackled brown, the purple throats of thistles drained and banished to silence. Only the bees still embrace the full magnificence of wanting more. There is something I haven't told you. To listen, it is best to get down on your knees. Let your knees pull your body into the holy decadence of the soil. Listen with your skin. Remember the luxury of kindness. Now breathe with your skin. Fill your body like the sacred vessel that was lost when you were first broken and scattered upon the earth. Don't hide anything. There is more than grasping, scratching, so much more than ripping and tearing apart. Every nuance of dead, crackled brown aches with the memory of brightness. Maybe it is time to hold my heart out like a brilliant sun for all to bask in. The window of longing is open. I am leaking out into everything. I will wait for you to find me. So I'm really sorry that John wasn't here because I didn't get to meet him last time either. He does realism, but he had this one piece that he photographed this graffiti, and that's what I was drawn to. I was talking with Nadia Brazi, one of the poets that's part of this event, and she was looking at reading this poem, the last event, and she said to me, I was standing next to her, so spiritual. And I said, it's about who we really are. And Nadia said, I get it. So many faces. At the end of every road, in the white bone glow of each beginning, I find her face. So many faces turned in every direction, heartstrings to the heavenly, to love that is insistent and ever present. A hymn to voices rising out of the ground. A love song to every holy and horrible seed of life. See those sad eyes? So many eyes. Let them sing now. Let this shining moon disk of a face lift her into the realm of all possibility. She wears many faces. Like you and I, she stumbles, falls, yet she always gets back up. She is the face of searching and wondering, of trying to find the one cord that wraps heaven and earth together. If you look long enough at the face just below the torn paper, you see a heart ruthlessly shattered and broken. She knows now this is part of the luminous, nameless presence that embraces all that is human. At times she loses her way, drifts, horizonless, not knowing the single point that unfolds the true depth of her heart. This face is dull, hollow, empty. But this landscape rapidly transforms and surges with an oncoming river of laughter and hope. She has drawn an orange box around this laughing face to always remember. Tucked in the bottom right corner, barely perceptible, is the face of her brightest diamond. She is crowned with the luminous presence. It begins in her heart and radiates in all directions. Here she resides in a state of nothing and everything. Here she knows all that she is. Here she belongs to everything. Here she knows that no one can separate the light from the light.
I still try to be in denial about needing these. I wanted to say that I'm sorry that Ed's not here tonight too, because when I talked to him about this at the last time we all were together at the gallery opening, his process in producing this piece was very much like wandering around a city looking for where you're going, which is what the poem is about. And the poem, I wish he could explain it. I absolutely could not explain his process, but it involved a lot of making marks and kind of partly erasing them, partly a little bit of a palimpsest, I guess, approach. But this poem is very literal. It was about a trip that I was very fortunate to take when I was flat broke, and some friends gave me money to go to Manchester, England, where I had a conference where I was presenting a paper. And then I had some time to wander around. So this is called City Center. Streets keep turning up where they shouldn't, unless my map's the wrong way round. It's useless anyway. Streets here are unlabeled. Well, why should they be laden with names? Back somewhere, the canals misplaced me. Behind them, I'd lost myself in Roman ruins. I'm 6 time zones off from my internal map, with no time to recenter, following my viewfinder wherever it leads, snatching quaint anonymity from scenes that will not tell their stories, until one nondescript building shouts, "Little Peter Street," places me back on the map. And I wind toward Victorian railroad arches, red bricks blackened and green with lichen and moss. They recount lifetimes of industry, ruin, reuse, whatever my lens can read into them. When we had the opportunity to come choose a poem or a work of art to respond to, I lucked out. I drew the number 2, so I got to pick right away, and I was gravitated toward this because, as it happens, I'm in the middle of writing a doctoral dissertation on urban ruin imagery. So part of what I did in this poem is I used one of my sources from my dissertation, a photographer named Harry Skrdla, who wrote a book called Ghostly Ruins, America's Forgotten Architecture. And if you're interested, I've got the footnote information in the poem in the book. I used a few phrases from his book throughout the poem to mirror the fact that when you're wandering through a site like this, you often find little scraps of things. Sometimes it'll be pieces of people's lives. It might be a postcard or a note or a child's toy or something. So, and they're such small fragments that I thought if I take some of his beautiful poetic phrases and pepper them through the poem, it'll be like those fragments. Unfortunately, I can't speak in italics, but in the book they're printed in italics. The one thing I have to say, though, is when I got this book, the last time we were here, I read everyone else's poems. I didn't really read mine, and I discovered tonight that the last 3 lines are missing. Oh, no. So I've looked them up. I've written them in my book, so I hate to say that. But I've been told that, oh, here she is. Deborah Benedict is going to dance for us again. For us.
Right.
Vanished industrialists, scavengers, scrappers have all fled the scene, leaving structure open to wind. Once grand edifice, now hackneyed desolation, a record of what we have wasted, crushed to dust. Concrete crumbles to humus. What terrible fate left behind such detritus? Sunlight attempts to sort through rubble, unravel prose into poetry. Its warm light planting hope in new dirt. A living being possessed of a soul, broken but not abandoned. What does it know, this tree, of market collapses and greed? Sacred bush aflame, riotous theophany where few would trespass to find it. Viewed from the inside, ruins harbor all the world, open to new life. Nature mends fissures with gold, flaunts wrinkles without regrets.
Oh, a little bit about me, just to give you some background info and something that may pop up while I'm up here. I am a cancer survivor for a form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And during part of that, they injected chemo into my spinal fluid. And my brain kind of changed permanently. And one of the permanent changes that happened is when I talk about things near and dear to me, I tend to get pretty weepy pretty easily. And I'm sure I would be crying by the time I step down. Okay? So it's not me having some sort of meltdown or breakdown, it's just how I roll, okay? Do not be alarmed, it will be okay. I started shooting in abandoned spaces in the mid-90s because I was poor and I didn't have studio space, and I was doing a lot of really avant-garde fashion photography at the time. And these sorts of backdrops worked very well with that material. And even after I stopped shooting that sort of stuff, I still had an interest in exploring the spaces with a camera. And some people would call photography of this genre ruin porn, and that makes me cringe. Because what I try to do is I try to find unexpected beauty in circumstances where you just would not think it would be. And this particular image is of a poplar tree in fall color. It is located inside of the abandoned Packard plant on the east side on the second floor. The little seeds blow in, the little white fluffy ones, and they grow near windows, you know, where there's water and coming in and sunlight for the tree, as well as on roofs, quite often on roofs. And I was kind of on a mission this one year to catch some, what I would call urbex fall colors. Urbex, urban exploration, also known as urban archaeology, the whole thing about wandering through abandoned spaces and seeing what you can find. So anyway, that's the story on that one. Yeah. Now, this next one has quite a story behind it. One of the things that happened because of the chemo and the brain changes is I sort of developed rather severe adult onset ADD. So my mind is constantly going in all these different directions. And part of that has to do with different portfolios I'm planning to shoot. And I'm probably working on a good 20 of them right now. One of them that I had in mind for the longest time was shooting homeless people with their signs. Some other background info, I happen to be in recovery. And I know that most people who are homeless and who are holding signs have an active addiction of sorts. And one day I was driving around near Eastern Market. I'd actually shot in Eastern Market, was heading home. I saw this guy standing on a corner with a sign. And it dawned on me, hey, I've been thinking about doing this. I'm going to talk to him. So I did. I pulled over, I talked to him. And I walked up to him and said, this is going to sound really odd, but I'm a photographer. And I see you here holding a sign. I've wanted to shoot a portfolio of people with their signs. You would be the first. Congratulations. And so we talked a bit, and I mentioned I was in recovery. I was not doing this to exploit. I was doing this to tell the story. I said, I see your sign says you're homeless. Yes. And I'm like, I assume you're addicted to something. Yes. What? Heroin? I'm like, oh boy, it's a bad one. So anyway, I couldn't shoot that day. I had to be somewhere. I was already late. I'm late for everything. I say I was born 15 minutes late and never caught up with myself. You know, that's kind of my thing. So I met back up with the guy the next day, and I shot him. And the first day I said, by the way, I'm not trying to save you. I'm not trying to change your life. I want to get your story. I want to get your picture. I'll pay you $20 for your time because I know if you're not here at your spot, you're not making money, and you need money. So I took him to lunch after we shot. And while at lunch, I realized that this guy was not the typical homeless addict. He wasn't totally broken. like so many can be living that life. And he had a brain, and he had a heart. And you'll notice, you probably can't see it, but if you look in the book, the sign reads, "Homeless but hopeful." And that really grabbed me. So we parted ways. I went home, I took the stuff off the camera, threw it onto the computer, messed around with it slightly in Photoshop, and got this image, and my mind was blown. So I show back up where he tends to hang out with his sign, and showed him the image. He was like, wow, you know. And at that lunch, by the way, I said, you know, I told you I'm not here to save you, but out of curiosity, do you have any plans to get clean anytime soon? And his response was, absolutely not. And I'm like, okay, right on. You know, at least you're honest. So I'm downtown a lot, you know, so I started checking in on him, see how he was doing. And this led to a friendship developing. So I went and I got him barbered, and I bought him some clothes. And I was determined to show him, remind him of what life is like when you're clean. So I hauled him around with me when I shot, when I went to the lab, when I did this, when I did that. And one day he announced to me that he was ready. That, you see, when it comes to addiction and recovery, for someone to make changes in their life, they have to truly want it, and they have to truly want it for themselves. Not because of the courts, not because of their job, not because of their family, but for themselves. Okay? And he told me, I'm ready, I want this. So anyway, to make a very long story short, and I've probably terribly bored you with already, he's 2.5 months clean today and doing amazingly well. And he happens to be here tonight, and I would like to introduce my good friend, the adopted son, Ben S.
How's everybody doing? Yeah. Picture says a lot. I was 139 pounds there. I had a lot of hope. I did. I was beat down. I was tired, and something very miraculous happened. This man came into my life. He threw me a life preserver, and I took it. I have 80 days clean today. I am I have a job. I have an apartment. And I have a beautiful girlfriend. Danny does really good work, and he is, introduced me to that, and it's very, very interesting. I'm not only an adopted son now, I am also a Urbex's bodyguard. But with that being said, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Not to hog the mic, but truly, in my opinion, the most important image I've ever captured. Not because of what it is in its own right as a strong image, but because of what came out of it. Thank you.
The poem connected to this photograph is called Crossroads and was written by Ron Strickland.
I want to thank Danny very much. He captured very much what you're going to hear in the last stanza of the poem. The poem actually is, I wrote it as dedicated to a colleague and a friend. And Sash is Indian, Hindu in his first life, and he had seen one day driving home from the hospital an individual, as you see, The sign said, homeless and hungry. And from that, Sash wrote a poem. English is his second language, so he wrote it in Hindu, which I don't read at all. And as we talked about some of about this poem and what he had seen, he kindly gave me a sort of English translation of it. And in that English translation, I'm only going to read you a couple of lines. Perhaps they think I'm a lazy bum or a drug addict. It is good that you, referring to his mother, who was mentioned earlier in the poem, left this world. That was the background I picked up on as I then wrote this poem back for Sash. Collar of the threadbare coat turned to the evening's damp. Silently, I stare from a milk crate dais, a handwritten sign, homeless and hungry, my fob. Judgments come from passing car windows. Lazy bum, get a job. This is my lonely corner, my place to wait. A boy in school uniform alights my mind's eye. I can almost feel your kiss on my forehead, almost see you waving until the road curved right. Come afternoon, you stood in this very same spot as if you had never left my sight. This was my happy corner. The school bus stopped. School taught me subjects. You taught me life. Our rough road through poverty smoothed with hard study, honest work, good deeds, a degree. Mother's pride beamed as you took my arm, whose hand held the diploma, graduate, MD. Corner to corner, I followed your direction. A good human being, a different day not so long ago. After you left this world, a cocaine sewer sucked me in, swallowed me whole. What remains is a shell without soul. Heartbroken in heaven, can you take me now? My last request, don't disavow. This is my dark corner. How long must I wait?